Hi, welcome to the TC. My name's David, and today we're going to be taking a look at the iPhone 16 Pro Max after I've been using it for about 2 weeks now. So starting with the design, the iPhone 16 Pro Max is essentially a rehash of the 15 Pro Max, which was already a similar design to the 14 Pro Max, which basically has been repeating itself since the 12 Pro Max, or even the 11 Pro Max if you're viewing it from the rear. There are 4 colors for the Pro models, these being black, natural, desert, and the one I have here is white. I have to say the white this year is really clean. Last year it had a warmer color temperature, but this year white is really bright, which I really appreciate. It gives me a feeling of the white iPhone 3GS or 4. The biggest standout feature for design this year, definitely screen size. We're now bumped up to a 6.9-inch display with super thin bezels. I mean, really thin. It definitely helps this phone seem a lot more modern even with the dated body design. Of course, like the 15 Pro series, titanium makes a return to the railings of the phone. Apple claims that this is a grade 5 titanium, so it should be fairly durable. I have the Apple Watch Ultra 2 in natural titanium, and it's held up remarkably well over the year that I've had it, so I'm sure it's no issue with the 16 Pro series either. Those titanium rails also contribute to the phone being quite light in comparison to the stainless steel rails on the older iPhones prior to the 15 Pro. I came from an iPhone 13 Pro Max to this iPhone, and honestly the feel in hand is really nice. Never realize how much of a difference having a lighter phone makes until you experience it. However, even though it's lighter, you're still going to find this phone to be quite large. In order to fit that larger display, the size of the phone has increased. In hand, the feel is really similar to the 13 Pro Max though, so I can imagine that most people won't really notice a physical difference, minus that huge screen of course. The dynamic island also makes a return again this year. Some might view this as a boon, but honestly it's not a big deal. I do like the functionality it brings, like the fact I can have a video on Safari play in the dynamic island even if I switch apps. On previous iPhones, it would actually close the YouTube video unless you were using the YouTube app. One of the new hardware revisions this year too is the addition of the new camera control button along the right side of the phone. This is across the entire whole iPhone 16 series though, so even if you get a base model 16, you'll have this button. I'll be sure to talk about it more in my camera section of the review though. Of course, there is USB-C on the bottom of this iPhone as well, so yay, I can finally kill another one of my Lightning products. Overall though, I really appreciate the lighter feel that the titanium brings, the larger display, and those razor thin bezels. But this design is definitely starting to feel kind of dated, and I do think that Apple will eventually have to think about switching it up, even if it's the addition of a new special variant model, such as the rumored iPhone 17 Slim next year. So what about performance? Yeah, this is one quick iPhone. The iPhone 16 Pro series sports the A18 Pro, which is a beefed up version of the A18 that's in the regular iPhone 16. What does that get you? An extra GPU core that is able to provide faster ray tracing, 2 times faster than what the iPhone 15 Pro can manage. But what does that really translate to in real life? Essentially the same performance as last year, with quicker render times when using it for applications of raw photo editing and video editing. It's not like the previous iPhones were slow, so I think that you can figure out that the performance of this iPhone simply improves yet again on an already fast phone. Essentially, you're future-proofing if you decide to get this phone and want to keep it for the next 4, 5, maybe 6 years. Benchmarking this iPhone was kind of insane though. The fact that it can keep up or even surpass the M1 chip, a desktop chip, is absolutely mind-boggling. Of course, you're going to run into thermal limits eventually, but the A18 Pro is a seriously powerful chip. It's actually the most powerful mobile device I have currently, which is ironically one of the smallest. So I have to give props to the performance of this iPhone honestly. It hasn't skipped a beat for me, and I really don't expect it to. So stop me if you heard this before. The iPhone 16 Pro Max features a rear triple camera setup with an ultra-wide, wide, and telephoto camera. Yep, pretty much since the iPhone 11 Pro Max, we've been dealing with a triple camera array. However, this year features some nice upgrades, especially for those coming from older iPhones. The main camera essentially remains the same as what we saw on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, except with a significantly faster readout speed, which in turn makes for essentially zero shutter lag. The moment that you press the shutter is the moment your photo is being taken. I really appreciate this coming from using actual cameras. It is still a 48 megapixel sensor, providing plenty of detail, especially in bright light situations. I actually quite like the new photographic styles edition as well, but more on that later too. For the telephoto, we're basically transplanting the exact same setup from the 15 Pro Max, so that means a 5x optical zoom and a 12 megapixel sensor. I would say it's probably the weakest camera in the triple setup with the resolution it has, but I appreciate the longer zoom being on the smaller 16 Pro now. For some reason though, Apple's processing for the telephoto muddies the photos when you take a closer look. I'll be sure to do more testing with the 5X using Halide or Moment in RAW to see if it makes a difference though. Finally, we've also made a major improvement to the ultra-wide since its introduction in 2019. We finally bumped up to a 48 megapixel sensor since it's able to capture more light with the bigger photocells, but also much more detail for macro shots, or just ultra-wide in general. Previously, the 12 megapixel ultra-wide would crop in when you get too close to take a macro, meaning you're only getting a portion of the sensor for macro unless you zoomed out to 0.5x manually. Now, macro provides a 12 megapixel crop on the 48 megapixel sensor, allowing for much more detail in either regular macro or ultra-wide photos. I love this change personally, and I'm really happy that they finally brought it to the 16 Pro series. There's also a LiDAR sensor in the rear for better portrait mode and low light, as well as the upgraded flash unit introduced with the 14 Pro. On the front, you're just getting the same camera from the 15 Pro, a 12 megapixel autofocusing selfie camera, which is good enough for what it is. Now, one of the biggest features of the 16 series this year is camera control. It's this button on the right side of the phone where the millimeter wave antennas used to be. It's interesting to use because it requires a lot more pressure to physically press than you might expect. This in turn can cause camera shake when taking photos using the button, which is really unfortunate. I really wish Apple would have made this button fully capacitive since it already has the capacitive function for the half press modes. Speaking of the half press, that is customizable in settings for how hard you have to press to enable it, but I found that the default option was enough for me, especially after using it for a while. It's a button that will take some time to get used to for a lot of people, but once you do, it's fairly intuitive. Is it faster than using the on-screen buttons? Probably not. Is it more fun and engaging though? I would argue possibly yes. I fear that this is a feature that a lot of people will try and then forget about, but I do see there being room to improve, and I want to see it improve too. I've been wanting to have my iPhone feel similar to my camera for a while, and having a physical shutter button is definitely one of those areas I love the camera control button for. However, that physical pressure to press is really annoying, and the lack of autofocus at half press not here yet also makes this feature feel half-baked and not quite ready yet. What does feel ready though? Those new photographic styles. One of the biggest complaints going around is how smartphone photos look so smartphone-y. They often look way too processed, way too much HDR, and especially with the iPhone, you lose all your shadows and highlights in the mission of making photos look bright all the way around. For a long time, this has been getting increasingly stronger too, with photos looking unnaturally bright, details and shadows to the point that images were so flat, you'd be thinking that you're taking screenshots of a video in log. Not even my raw photos on my camera are this flat. So with the introduction of photographic styles, Apple has created a way to create different ways of manipulating color and tone in your photos. This was first introduced with the iPhone 13, but the 16 series expands on this with a completely redesigned interface. With the new photographic styles, you can choose between two major categories: undertones and moods. Undertones manipulates the color temperature and skin tone so you can select the tone you like best in settings, and the camera will default to this whenever you open it. Moods reminds me more of something like film simulations. They go a little more crazy with the colors and tones while letting you make a decision on how much you want it to influence your photo. What's really great about these though is that they're all non-destructive, meaning you can take a photo with specific undertone or mood and then revert it or adjust it after the fact. It isn't baked into the photo permanently, such as a film sim and a camera might be. Of course, this means slightly larger file sizes, but still makes for a good compromise for finding what moods or undertones suits you best. What's really awesome about this though is that you're finally able to adjust your photos so they aren't so processed looking. Adjusting the tone down seems to bring back shadows and highlights into your photos, making them way more punchy and contrasty than the default HDR look you get. I think what Apple is trying to do here is appeal to the huge boom right now for film simulations and that older digicam look that's becoming increasingly popular, but also catering to users who want an easy point-and-shoot experience. And I'm all for it, and having more control of how my photos look is greatly appreciated. So that's the photo side of things. How does video hold up? Well, of course, the iPhone has been popular for a very long time since it has great quality video, and the 16 Pro series is no exception. For the first time, we have the ability to shoot 4K at 120 frames per second, which is something I've been waiting for since the introduction of 240 FPS, slow-mo, and 1080p. The quality? Pretty great. I haven't had a huge amount of use cases to shoot in 4K 120, but once I get more time with this device, more places and such, I will be sure to try it out more to see what I can really squeeze out of this phone. I don't have too much to say about video yet since I've only had it for about 2 weeks, and as of filming, it's actually been slightly less than that, and I've been really busy, but it's really good quality so far, and yeah, I like it. One of the biggest changes was also the addition of studio quality microphones, allowing for the new audio mix feature for videos. So let's see if you can notice a difference between the 4 modes. So I'm currently recording on the iPhone 16 Pro Max right now so that we can test the new audio mix feature. So I have a fan running above the phone right now, and if I put it on in frame, you really shouldn't hear the fan at all. It should be focusing on what I'm saying right now. But if I open it up to the cinematic mode, you should be hearing a little bit of the fan while my voice remains centered with you. If I switch it to something like studio, then the microphone should focus on my voice again, and also kind of cut out any outside sound altogether. And now we're back to normal. So, how does the audio mix sound? Do you think it sounds bad, overprocessed, or does it sound normal to you? Let me know in the comments down below. So let me know in the comments if you notice anything different. So that's pretty much it for the camera. I'll be sure to have something more comprehensive as time goes on, but since it's only been about 2 weeks, my time using it has been a little limited. So next I want to talk about the speakers, because wow, they're just fantastic. I've never really felt like the speakers on my 13 Pro Max are bad when I had it, but this 16 Pro Max really punches above what I was anticipating. The speakers on this phone get properly loud and are actually punchy. There's a hint of distortion at the limit, but you rarely need to use them at 100% anyway. Here's how they sound. So next, let's talk about battery life and connectivity. The battery on the iPhone 16 Pro Max is rated for 4 hours of more screen on time compared to the 15 Pro Max during video playback. What does this translate to? A pretty significant increase of battery in real-world use. The first couple days were a little rough, and I was thinking that I possibly had a bad battery or something just because the screen on time was fairly low for the phone, but this was due to indexing. About 4 or 5 days later, battery life took a dramatic swing for the better, and I can easily get through my day with a lot to spare, usually around the 40–50% mark. The phone actually suggested that I use the 80% capacity limit for my use, and I'm trying it out for now just so I can see how that holds up. On a physical connection standpoint, there is USB-C 3.0 only on the Pro models. The regular ones get USB 2.0, which honestly is a really dumb thing to even be saying in 2024, yet here we are. This does mean that you get fairly good transfer speeds with the Pros though, which you will be needing if you're recording a lot of 4K 120 or ProRes log footage. Oh, there's also faster charging on MagSafe up to 25 watts. There was rumors of 45 watts wired, but it only draws that power when plugging in and using it. Luckily, even with the upgraded charging, the phone doesn't really get that warm. You will want to plug it in physically though for the fastest charging speeds. So some final thoughts I have with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. It's a good iPhone, but it definitely feels iterative and incomplete as it stands currently. It's really weird to have Apple push Apple Intelligence so hard in marketing, yet these phones have none of those features right now. I personally didn't buy the 16 Pro solely for Apple Intelligence, so it hasn't hindered my experience with it right now. Yet it leaves a bitter taste for a company to market these features and spend so much time talking about them when they aren't even out with the release of the phone. It definitely seems like it was a rush launch in order to appease shareholders, that they are working on AI features and these phones are built to support them, yet it doesn't have them. So that definitely complicates this review, as it simply isn't a complete realization of what the 16 Pro really should be. At this point, it would be best to consider 16 Pro as the 15 Pro S. It improved and fixed many of the issues that the 15 series had, such as the thermals and battery life, while improving things such as the camera system, faster charging, bigger displays, and the performance bump. It really makes it feel like an S upgrade, and honestly, that's perfectly fine. We're at a point with smartphones that you do not need to upgrade on a yearly cycle. The biggest improvements come from waiting a few years in between to really get the most bang for your buck, and improvements over time. So when we compare the 16 Pro series to the older Pro models, such as the 13, 12, and 11, that's when we really begin to see the larger overall improvements. Not to say that those phones are bad either though, but it makes sense coming from the perspective of those devices to look at the newest iPhone instead of comparing it to the iPhone from 1 or 2 generations ago. So what are some of my other thoughts on the iPhone 16 Pro Max? Well, iOS 18 is a little buggy currently. I'm dealing with a weird issue where the screen doesn't automatically turn off if I tap it or turn it on to look at my lock screen, and sometimes the screen is on in my pocket even if I have locked it. I have the always on display off, but it still does this sometimes. Also, the touch sometimes doesn't work correctly on the top left for notification center, leaving me swiping repeatedly. But these are known software glitches that should be hopefully patched in 18.0.1 soon. So all of this compounds down to one question. Is the iPhone 16 Pro Max worth it? Well, it depends. If you're coming from an older iPhone, your battery isn't great, maybe your phone is cracked, or it's just not running smoothly anymore, you've got two options. You can either buy a new phone and eat the cost up front, or you can have your battery replaced for $99 and continue to use it till you feel that the features justify upgrading. I believe that a lot of the people who buy these phones will be coming from older models, and that they will really enjoy them. But you have to really keep in mind that these are not for the people coming from a 15 Pro or 14 Pro, maybe debatably not even a 13 Pro. So for the people it is for, they will feel a pretty substantial difference. So that's it for the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys are interested in the iPhone 16 or 16 Pro series, or if you have the iPhone 16 Pro. I am interested to see your guys' experience with it, as well as any questions that you guys might have. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below to see more content just like this. I'll see you guys in the next video.